The following podcast contains adult language and themes, so don't say we didn't fucking warn you.
You're listening to SarahTalk. It's political.
Senator Harris?
She reminds me so much of, like, if Maria from Sesame Street went into politics and got angry about shit.
Who's that the Wisconsin girl that nobody likes? What's her freaking something chur? Yobichur? Yobichur?
Oh my god, this is gold.
Girl.
Keep going. Keep going.
Critical.
They care about the life of the unborn child, but once it's born, you know, it should pull up its little bootstraps and go get a second job and fucking take care of itself, you know?
And positively LGBT positive.
Look, whenever there's someone coming after my community, they are either wearing a MAGA hat, carrying a Bible, or more often both.
Oh, and occasionally completely absurd.
Oh, they're shutting us down. They're deplatforming us. I do a pretty good Alex Jones voice. They're turning the frogs gay.
Okay, you're sleeping in a child's room tonight because there's no way you're sleeping next to me. That is disgusting. I'm going to have nightmares.
And now, from Haines City, Florida, your host, Sarah Austin.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of SarahTalk. I am Sarah Austin. Becca will be joining shortly, I think. We're struggling to get the kids put to bed. So let me tell you real quick before we get going here what we did. We moved the children into a room together. You see where they had been in separate rooms, but the oldest was not sleeping in his room by himself. So we thought, let's put them both in the same room. Maybe that'll help. And it worked for a day or two. And now they're in there fighting sleep. So we're back to that game. But we'll see if. And of course, Gizmo is in the studio here, driving me absolutely bonkers. So we'll see if we can get the kids to sleep, and Becca will join us. But that's okay because we have a very special guest with us this evening. I have Anita Carson with us. Anita Carson is running for Polk County School Board. Anita, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you again. Why don't we just start out with, just tell folks just a little about yourself, who you are, what you're all about, and, why you're running for school board.
Okay. Well, my name is Anita Carson, as Sarah said earlier, and I am a sixth grade science teacher, and I have been in education for 10 years. And I am very passionate about education policy and education law and how those things impact our community here in Polk. And so I am incredibly happy to run for school board because I think having a strong school board that's willing to push for the legislation that we need for our kids is going to be one of the things that helps fix education here in Polk. I'm also very passionate about building up community support and community involvement here because we cannot rely on Tallahassee for everything. And so building those relationships and then actually using them to better our school system and to better the lives of our students and our families is something that I would like to do. So that is why I'm running.
Awesome. I didn't want to interrupt you there, but like you said, rely on Tallahassee for everything. You can't rely on Tallahassee for anything at this point.
Right. Right. I mean, I still want to keep pushing because there's a lot of things we can do with focused pressure, but
sure.
Yeah, also building up that capacity here at home too.
Yes, and change in Tallahassee so that we can actually take care of things. I think normally I am super scripted and I write a shit ton of notes and it's all prepared and written out. But I thought, we've chatted before. Let's just have a little informal chat here. And so we are like, I would love to just have the last time we did one of these for school board, we talked to Kayla Tedder and the last election cycle for school board. And, that was your very classic sort of, what's going on in the school district and what do you want to accomplish and, all of that kind of stuff. And these are unique times, right? We're right now scrambling to figure out what the hell do we do as far as reopening schools. How does that work? What does that look like? And the Tallahassee problem is we have people running this state who are all for we're mandating that you open schools and have your kids in brick and mortar, at least as an option.
Right.
When and I want you to speak to this from the science teacher perspective. This is the one thing I love about you so much. As a parent, when I think about, let's get our kids back in physical brick and mortar schools, I think that's the most asinine thing I've ever heard, especially given like all the data that we have on where the state of Florida is, where Polk County is in the COVID crisis. Am I wrong? Am I
Um, so as a teacher, I miss being around kids, and that's something that I'm actually really sad about, because if I do win this election, I can't be both a teacher and a board member.
right?
And so that is something that, like, that was a huge part of this decision for me, was deciding, can I leave the classroom and not be around 130 sixth graders every day? Like, that's something I love. I know that for some people that sounds like a nightmare, but for me, like, that's that's my bread and butter. It's what I like. But no, when we're talking about opening physical schools, I definitely want to be there. And I hate the narrative that teachers are wanting not to go back to schools. We want to go back to schools. It's not a want thing.
Yep.
AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, did a survey, and 75% of us want to go back in brick and mortar schools right now, except for we want to do it safely. And so when you talk about, like, the American Association of Pediatrics came out with this release a few weeks ago about it's incredibly important for kids to be getting that socialization aspect, and hands-on learning is much better for kids than digital learning, and all of these really, really amazing reasons why you need to go back in brick and mortar. Literally, like, 2 days later, DeSantis said, yes, everyone's going back to school. And the APA came back and said, except for Florida. Like, please don't. So, like, it's really important when we look at the data of Florida. Florida, if it were its own country, if we were comparing it worldwide, is in the top 10 as its own little country. So we're behind, like, the United States and Brazil and India. And then there's Florida, just on its own. It's the amount of COVID cases that we have here. And we're not testing to the level we need to. If we were testing to the level we need to, our positive percentage would be less than 5%. Our positive percentage in adults is closer to 28, and in kids it's 32.
Wow.
Now, part of that is because we don't test a whole lot of kids. In a lot of places, you can't get a kid tested without a doctor's prescription effectively telling you to go get it tested. And so we don't actually know the real number of positive cases anywhere, because in Florida, we are not testing anywhere to the level we need to get out ahead of this. And I've actually been hearing some scientists say that the amount of testing we would have to do to get to that point, we're getting to a place where we won't be able to test that many people. It would have to be like every person gets tested. And we have a shortage of tests, so we're sort of stuck.
Well, I have it on good authority.
It is asinine to go back right now. I want to go back when it's safe, but that's 14 days of a downturn and a significant number reduction, and we're not there.
No, and that all along we had the that was part of the deal, was like states should not be considering reopening until we've seen 14 consecutive days, and we didn't see 2 consecutive days. We didn't see like, yes, there was a slight downtick, but there's just so much of this that is a scientific illiteracy in the general population of, like, people don't even know how to read the charts that are coming out, right? Like, okay, yes, the case numbers are skyrocketing, but the death count's not. It's not going up, and the hospitalizations aren't too bad. Okay, give it a few weeks, because there's a lag between. Oh God, you know what? I just don't have the energy anymore.
And I have this conversation, especially around, like, the mask conversation with people, because there's a difference between microparticles and macroparticles. And so when you start talking about masks and how they protect you and how they protect other people, yes, a viral particle is a microparticle. That is very true. But it doesn't come out of a body on its own. It comes out of a body in a macroparticle or a droplet most of the time, unless it's been aerosolized. And aerosolized, you have to like when you're talking about putting in and taking out ventilators, sometimes that gets aerosolized because there is air pressurized there. So doctors need more significant masks because they're around microparticles. But for the most part, people are going to be around and exposed to macroparticles, and macroparticles get stopped by just a plain cloth mask in either direction. And you reduce transmission by each person who's wearing it and for the length of time they're wearing it. And so when we talk about, especially in schools, if we do go back to brick and mortar, that mask mandate, I know that kids are not going to be able to wear them 100% of the time because they are children. And for the same reason that we mandate you need to wear a belt with your uniform, and you will have kids not wearing a belt. We mandate you have to tuck in your shirt, and there are kids who don't have their shirt tucked in. You can get 80, 90% compliance, but every kid that is complying and every kid that is in a mask, even for a moment or two, every moment they're in a mask is risk reduction. And so when you talk scientifically, that's what we're looking for. It's not going to get to 100% good. It's not going to get to 100% safe. The goal here is risk reduction. And risk reduction also includes looking at the data of numbers of cases. And there's no way to reduce the risk enough right now to open brick and mortar, even with masks and other things. Now, if we had a countywide mandate for masks and we gave that a few weeks to work, and we gave the patients who are currently, because like Winter Haven Hospital, I saw something today about they're setting up an external ICU section because they don't have enough space in their ICUs. They've run out. We have lots of our hospitals in Polk County that are at 4 and 5% left ICU space. We need to give those people time to heal and not be putting new people into ICUs if we can help it. And not all of the ICU beds are taken by COVID. It's about 30%. But that's 30% more ICU beds than we would have had last year at the same time. And so you're not only going to see mortality rates going up with COVID, but when those beds are full, you're going to have more mortality for things like heart attacks because you don't have the bed space. Yep. And so people, they're like, well, the COVID deaths are this, right? But that impacts all other aspects of healthcare. And we need to not overload healthcare because they were already running lean. So, like, our country does not have a robust healthcare system. We didn't to start with. And so let's not overload them, because if you have to start deciding who gets an ICU bed and who doesn't, we've got a big problem.
For sure.
So sorry, that was a mini rant.
No, that's good. I'm thinking about like the return to school stuff and just in general the way people are handling this. You know, you've got the mask holes, I guess we're calling them.
Yeah, the size of the weave of the cloth. Yeah.
Yep. And like.
Oh no, you mean mask holes? Got it. I understand.
Yeah.
Just got up.
So a few months ago, when this was really all starting to ramp up, right? When we had the safer stay-at-home order, I had conversations with people and people at work that one of the things that I think slowed us down in the beginning was that we had to get to a point where people started being affected in fewer degrees of separation. Unfortunately, as sad as that is, you can't just give people data. Sometimes you've got to have, an emotion to go with it. So NPR did a great story about like the number of people that the average American knows. And when you do the calculus out from there, there's just a lot of people that didn't know somebody that hasn't been affected close enough to them for them to really get it. That, I believe, has changed dramatically. At least it has for me. There are people a degree of separation now that I know. There are friends of ours right now who have been the last few days fighting through fevers and the inability to taste and smell and passing it to, he's got it now, she's got it now, we're worried about the kids, are the kids going to get it? This is affecting people I know now. And so I have been taking it seriously from jump, and people scoffed at me for it. No, Sarah, this is, it's not. how many times have we heard all of these things? Oh, it's the flu kills more people than the coronavirus. Brr, 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 brr. Okay, well, sit tight because we're not done yet, first of all. Like, it ain't over.
Right.
So I think that's something that's changing, and I don't know. I hope that will change the public approach to this, that people will start wearing their fucking masks. Sadly, to your point, where we can't get, we have poor leadership that won't just, make a mandate because your freedoms, gotta protect my freedoms.
Right. But
And
we forget about the freedom to live.
oh,
Like that's a thing. And
yes,
and being alive, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, isn't that a thing?
oh
And life
yes.
is that first one. You can't do the rest without it.
It
So
it's interesting too that the so many correlations to the 1918, and
yeah,
like there,
influenza and this track each other
yeah.
almost entirely, and it's
It's
so scary.
crazy. The same people that were, I'm not wearing a mask. This is stupid. I shouldn't have to wear a mask in my freedoms, and it's not effective, and blah blah blah. Like that was a movement during that time too, and it's just insane. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, but when we're talking about our kids, I hear a lot of, well, it doesn't affect kids as bad, and the younger you are, the less severe the symptoms seem to be, or it's not as, and and a lot of that is just false. Um, but also, like, okay, even if you're not going to buy into the actual evidence of the thing, okay, but they can carry it home to grandma who has
Right.
a debilitating condition that's going to make, I don't know. It's just so frustrating.
So if you look at kids, we do have data that shows that the cases of pediatric cases of COVID, they tend to have less severe symptoms, right? But everybody focuses on the mortality rate, and kids' mortality is super low, and that's true, and that's good. Like we want kid mortality to be super low, but also mortality is not the only thing that happens here. Um, Kids, especially for their trachea and their lungs and how they function, a lot of times the ventilators are made for adults. You have pediatric ventilators, but we are running out of ventilators too. And so you have this concept where you have to sort of be laid upside down with your head hanging over the side of a bed for the ventilator to work appropriately to allow the sputum out of your lungs. And their parents sometimes are allowed in with them. I have a friend who her son was going through cancer treatment during all of this COVID craziness, and she could either be in the room 24/7. She has other kids at home too, or not visit. Those were the options. And so, because once you leave the room, you can't go back and forth because you risk bringing it to him, and he has a compromised immune system. And so she was staying in his hospital room with him 24/7. Her kids had to be taken care of by grandparents and other people. Um, that's horrifying, and that's not even for a kid who has COVID, but for the kids who do. Now you have parents making some of those same choices. Do I stay with this kid, this one kid in the hospital who's frightened and scared and alone, or do I take care of my other kids at home? Which one am I picking? And that choice is awful. You have adults who are having to make those choices. But even if the kid doesn't die, we are seeing scarring of lung tissue. We are seeing major health impacts. It's whole body systemic impacts. And we don't know what happens to kids or adults years from now. We know that viruses can stay in the body and reemerge as other infections later down the road. This is a new a new infection. We don't know how this is going to impact kids. So even a kid who right now comes through COVID with just cough and slight flu symptoms, 10 years from now could have a debilitating lung disorder. And we don't know that yet. And putting our kids in that risk, knowing that we're already having severe symptoms in kids and adults, and knowing what we know about viruses, it's entirely irresponsible to risk that for economic gain. Like that, that is entirely irresponsible. I understand people are hurting economically, and I understand people losing jobs. My husband works for Disney. He's been furloughed.
Mhm.
I get it. No, he lucked out and figured out how to go through the Florida unemployment system, which is its own nightmare.
Yep.
But losing income, especially for so many people living in poverty, and Polk County, tons, more than half of Polk County lives in or around the poverty line. So much so that we don't even fill out paperwork for free and reduced lunch anymore.
Yep.
We are covered under something called community eligibility, because it is cheaper to just give everybody food than it is to chase down all the paperwork. It's literally more cost effective because we have such a high percent of kids living in poverty in Polk County.
I would
So
argue.
ugh.
I would argue that it's more ethical to just feed the kids anyway, regardless of what their
I
status is.
I would argue that as well. But as far as like, if you are looking at allocation of resources,
Sure.
and you have a limited pie, which that's a whole
Yeah,
nother argument in
pie
and of
needs to be
itself
bigger.
about what scarcity versus
Yeah.
that's a whole nother argument. But
you left me with like 3 jumping off points there that that I want to come back to. You read my notes about the and we didn't plan any of this ahead of time.
No.
About we just don't know what the long-term consequences are going to be. Like,
Right.
And I think people didn't think this was serious either. But I think a good something that's analogous to that is chickenpox and shingles.
Mhm.
You know, and that we've learned now that hey, maybe having chickenpox parties is not a great idea. Like, let's not get everybody together so that they'll just get over it quicker.
Right.
But now
Like,
you've got
okay,
people
you
having
get it.
COVID parties.
Right. Right.
Christ.
There was a whole story coming out of Alabama about kids having COVID parties. I don't know the validity of those. I haven't looked into it enough to say like, yes, it's happening, but just the concept
Yep.
that, and once the concept out there, someone will have them,
Oh,
even if
yeah.
it wasn't true beforehand. And it's just, it hurts my brain. Like, we understand immune systems, we understand virology, we understand how viruses work. We don't understand COVID yet fully. And that's another thing. People complain about the guidance changing all the time.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
That's how science works. We take in new information and we change based on what new information says. That's what we need. But we also need a scientifically literate public to know that when science is learning something, it might change based on new input, because that's how science works.
That one drives me absolutely crazy because you're right. Like that's what we saw the entire time. Well, the first thing was masks aren't going to be very effective with this, so don't bother wearing a mask. Oh, just kidding. We found out masks actually probably are kind of effective, so you should wear. And then okay, well now actually we should wear them more often than we thought before. But that's the self-correcting mechanism of science. Like that's.
Right.
That's how it's supposed to work. But people see that as, well, the initial guidance was wrong, so the method is wrong. And they just it is a complete lack of understanding of basic science.
And I get very frustrated
As a science
with that,
teacher,
but I
that's
also
gotta
know that
drive you nuts.
it's a scientific literacy piece. And that's literally that is a 6th grade science standard, and a 7th grade science standard, and an 8th grade science standard, and a 9th grade. Like, so the standards we follow in Florida are called Next Generation Sunshine State Standards for Science, NGSS. And NGSS standards have a piece called Nature of Science. And you teach Nature of Science in science class every year. And obviously it's going to look different from 12th grade to 6th grade, but the nature of science and how it is different from other ways of thought and other ways of knowing things is literally like the basis of the standard. And then from there, you look at how we've developed scientific knowledge over time. My favorite thing to teach my kids is cell theory, because we look at cell theory and you can look at the change of cell theory over a 300-year time frame and how much we learned about. I love teaching my kids. We talk about spontaneous generation. Scientists used to think that like maggots and bugs grew from food spontaneously because we didn't know what eggs were yet. we didn't realize that people had these pieces inside them that created new life by mixing them together and popping out babies. Like, we didn't know what that looked like yet because we didn't know. Science tries to take the information we have and give you the best explanation we can get. And then when we get new information, we change the explanation because that's now the new best explanation we have. It's durable because it is malleable. And I need that to be something that all the adults in my life know too. My kids know it when they leave my room. I need the adults in my life to know it too.
Well, maybe if we're all distance learning, we can require the parents to sit in on a lesson. It's, it's, I think we talked about this the first time we talked, but I always like to relate the story of my experience in when I started hating science. It was like 7th or 8th grade. And science class became all about rote memorization for regurgitation on the test. And so, it was memorize and label the parts of a cell on the shittiest, photocopied garbage artwork drawing that you could, come on. It's the picture that they've been using for 50 years and they just keep photocopying it, but nobody has the original. Yeah. And it was less about the understanding the method, the process, and it was just more about, here's some facts that I need you to memorize. History was the same way. When I finally had a history teacher that was like, look, the test is going to ask you names and dates and places and all of that stuff. And I really don't care about that. I want you to walk out of this class with an understanding of why these things happened. How did we get, I don't care if you know the day that World War II started. I need you to understand how we got there, what was happening in the world, why that was such a moment, what happened during that time. I need you to have a broader understanding of things that happened, because as we know, if you don't soak that stuff in, we are bound to repeat it. And so similarly, I had that experience in science class where it was just like, well, I guess standardized testing has created this situation where I just have to memorize facts, and that's what we call learning.
I guess that's one reason I like 6th grade science specifically. That's what I teach right now. But we don't test science until 8th grade. And so while I do definitely teach my standards, there's not as much of a push to make sure that you've met every requirement of a test. And so I can talk to my kids, and I know I just talked about cell theory, and so that's what's on my brain. But I can talk to my kids about these common things that right now. That living things are made of cells, and that cells come from other cells, and that it's that basic unit of life. These things. It's just so common that even before you ever learn cell theory, those pieces. Those because of scientific discoveries. And let's talk through where those came from. And we can talk about Schleiden, and we can talk about these scientists and how these technologies created, without the microscope, you wouldn't know those things. And so we can have this sort of search and journey and research and learning. Well, who called it a cell first? Who was the first person to do that? I don't have to beat it into their heads because they can go through a discovery time and learn about it, because we don't have a test at the end of the year. They don't have a science test until 8th grade, and their science teacher in 8th grade is going to hit it again. And because we do crazy jam-pack 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science into 8th grade to try and make sure that they've seen everything at least once. And so in 6th grade science, I focus on making sure they're engaged in science and that they know the background processes of science and they want to be in science class. We do so many labs, it's not even funny. They get to do the cheek cell thing where they scrape their cheek cell and they get to look at their own cells and dye them with phthalo blue, which makes the DNA pop. And then I get to gross them out because the RNA on the little bacteria around it. I'm like, you didn't brush your teeth this morning because that's all the RNA. And it's just, but that engaging part of science can happen because we don't test until 8th grade. And so I get to do that with my kids. And I guarantee you they keep that information better than they would if I just said, okay, what did Theodore Schleiden do? What did Schwann do?
Right.
Okay, what years were those people in? What time period? That's not important. The importance is what technology revolutionized cell theory? How did that happen? Where did that come from? Why didn't we know that everything was made of cells until the 1600s? Why didn't we know that? That's important. That's the overall themes that we need people getting, not points on a test. Like that's not where we need to be.
Yep. And that just, I mean, that plays right back to, the conversations we were having earlier about mandates from the state and, Department of Education and all of that stuff where, all of this stems into, this is something that Jared and I talked about on the last one. The idea of home rule only being convenient when it's convenient for you, and then screw you when it's not convenient for me, because we're just going to dictate to you from fiat on high.
It's home rule until you want to do something I don't want you to do, and then
Right.
and then Tallahassee gets to tell you what to do. No.
One of the things that I like that I'm seeing in the past week or two is the state came out and said, oddly enough, if I remember the timeline correctly, the DeSantis came out and said first, hey, we're gonna get our kids back in school. This is the plan. This is the way. Kids are going back to school, and then not long after that, then it was Trump and DeVos preaching that message. If I remember right, that
I actually don't know the timing. I know
order.
that like Trump and DeVos and DeSantis were all within like a week of each other. I just don't know which domino fell first.
So
I
mean, we know DeSantis is good and close to Trump. So that doesn't come as much of a surprise. But over the past week or so, all of the different school boards that we've seen come out and say, no.
I do know the domino that fell first there. That was Palm Beach County, and Palm Beach County was like, "Oh no, we're not doing that. We're going to full distance learning, and we will reassess when it's safe." And I was like, "Yes," because I've also been reading. So my other hobby outside of being a science teacher, I like reading Supreme Court decisions and law decisions. Like they make me happy. But I've been reading some things from lawyers who worked for the State Department of Ed. Go ahead.
Maybe not the last handful. I haven't been enjoying reading them.
I mean, we had some good ones there for a little bit. Like we had
absolutely.
a few that were really good.
Yes.
And then we had one last week that I was just like, what are we doing?
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But that's fine. But there are some lawyers who used to work for the Department of Ed for Florida who basically came out and said that Corcoran doesn't have and DeSantis doesn't have the legal authority to demand that schools open. Closing them for an emergency, they had. Demanding they open is a different set of legalities. And these local school boards actually have final say in what is safe for their kids in their schools. And so once those guidance came out from former lawyers, all of a sudden all the counties are like, okay, so I'm going to take it two ways. DeSantis said that we need to pay attention to Department of Health people. Our Department of Health person said, yep, they said it's not safe, so we're not opening. And so there are some counties that are trying to put it across as, we're listening to what DeSantis said, and he said to open when it's safe. So we're not opening now because it's not safe. And then there's some counties that are just going, no, we're not doing that. But either way, you still have counties saying no. Polk has pushed back our time frame, but we're still planning on doing all three options once we get to that point. I am hoping, and it sounds like the board might be willing right now, maybe, I don't know, maybe to either push back the time frame again or open on the time frame they've selected now, but only for either virtual or e-learning. And that's really what I'm hoping for. I want to get started with the year. I just don't want to do it face to face. And I know for some kids that makes their education part worse, and I get that, but it makes community health better. It makes families safer as far as their health. It makes kids safer for their health. And we also cannot put all of society's ails on schools.
Yep.
Parents talk about how schools are not being flexible because their kids need to go there. Okay. Your company's not being flexible with your time either. So can we talk about your jobs not being flexible with you as a parent in the middle of COVID? Not every job can be done from home. I get that, but maybe you and your spouse have different schedules now so that you can stay home with the kid during this time and the other spouse can go to this time, something like that. But companies have to be flexible too. Schools can't fix everything. We just can't. So sorry, another soapbox. I have lots of them.
No, God, that takes us back to the economy. And maybe I should say too up front, like, I want people to understand that, God, if you follow me on social media, I am just banging the drum about, not opening schools in person. And a lot of that comes from a place of privilege. And I recognize that. And like, I want to put that out there. We are in a good spot where I make enough, if I don't get furloughed, I make enough now to where Becca doesn't have to work. So she's here with them. So she can, oh, did you bring me some more Coke? Ah, damn. So she has the freedom to be at home with the kids to, help monitor, do the schoolwork and because especially if we're going to follow the school day schedule, that's going to be real hard if parents are working. And so anyway, I get that, that we are in a place of, massive privilege when it comes to this. And so then I think about, all of these students who can't, I get it that you have to get this whole thing. And this is, I'm becoming more and more anti-capitalist the older I get. But the whole thing to me is, your options were fix the unemployment system. Well, we're not going to do that. So we're not going to fix the unemployment system. We're not just going to give people money. Are you silly? We're not doing that. They need to go back to work. They need to work for your money. Okay, well, then we're going to send people back to work. Well, they can't go back to work unless they got some place for their kids to go. Well, we got to get those schools open back up on time then. And to me, the breadcrumbs lead right back to this is just simple capitalism being awful. And I think we're at a stage where we have to start recognizing that unrestrained, unrestricted capitalism is just on paper. Capitalism looks great, but it's not going to work long term in practice. So, I want to live in a world where our kids are educated and we don't worry about all of the things that come along with it, and we can do that. I don't want to live in a world where people are worried about where they're going to get their meal tonight or where they're going to sleep tonight. And we could solve those problems. I know y'all are tired of hearing me say it today, because the money is there. It's just in the hands of a few people. And homelessness gone tonight if we just did it. And so this is a part of my love of public education, because private education is not going to do it. We've seen what privatizing everything else has done. We've seen how private corporations are handling a pandemic. Oh no, we've got to get open back up. We're hemorrhaging. We're losing money. The CEO is not going to get their $250 billion bonus this year. We have to get opened back up. And I need my employees to come back, which means their kids need to go back to school. All of it just pisses me off. Sorry. That's my soapbox for the night.
Well, I can say from so you're talking like super macro.
Yes, I am.
and I'm gonna let you talk super macro. So for me right now, especially running for school board, I am trying to focus in super micro, I guess, like Polk County specifically. What can we do? And one of the things that I think sort of gets overlooked is this concept of collective effort. And so things like a collection of parents. You've got 5 households that get together, and you're right, there are so many parents that are privileged to have a parent at home. But if you have like single parents, there's no way for them to both go to work and be there for their kid. There's not a second person there. But if you have a collection of parents and the companies were willing to work with people, maybe one parent takes Monday and one parent takes Tuesday and one parent takes Wednesday. They all work a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. All of their kids have somewhere to be that is safe, that's with an adult, that has someone who's there. And all of them are also going to work. Like fixing macro systems, definitely like a giant conversation that needs to be had. But on a micro level, what can we do here that makes our communities more able to resist what's happening in our world and make them more resilient and come out of this better? And the way to do that is through collective action. But I'm not seeing those types of things being really offered as even solutions.
Right.
And I mean, I am definitely purposely focused on education because that's my passion, and that's where I am. But I believe that there are people who are focused on child care, and that is a child care issue. So instead of having child care centers be the solution, collections of childcare with parents, because childcare is also incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And if you have a collection of 5 families, the risk there, we talked earlier about the limiting the risk. It's not zero, but it's less than your kid goes to a school with 700 other families of kids. 5 families is a much smaller risk, especially when you're all at the same table every day, even if it's different adults each day. And so I feel like there's a way to mitigate risk and get economic going again with parents going to work if they have to, and making sure that nobody is drowning. But it takes our community working together. And I think there's ways to do that. But people who are looking at housing initiatives and that's their passion and what they work on, what are we doing to help our community be more resilient through the pandemic for housing? We can't fix the macro because, oh my God, that system is broken. We can't right now anyway, like in this moment. But there are micro things that we can do. And so I wish that were more of the movement that I was seeing.
Yeah.
I'm doing my thing in education and doing what I can here. So
I think there's an opportunity for business leaders, local business leaders, to step in and say, hey, we understand that there's some serious stuff going on right now. And we're going to try to work with people. And I get it. Then you get into unions and you get into, I still have a business need. My God, if you go to apply for a Target or Walmart or any kind of job like that, I'm sorry, you're not available nights, weekends, and holidays. Well, you can just rip up your application because we don't even want to talk to you.
Right.
So like, there's got to be some give and take. There's got to be a way to be a little more forgiving in helping families sort through all of the stuff that they're dealing with right now. I mean, on top of all of that, we're all, I think, I don't speak for everybody, but I'll speak for my household. We don't want to be going anywhere. I don't want to be going to work. I don't want to be taking my kids to school. I sure as hell don't want to be them on a bus.
God, I had to go grocery shopping today and I hated it.
Hey, everybody. Becca's here.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Becca.
Rah, children would not go to sleep. Hi. I'm so mad.
And
I missed your live video earlier because of children. I missed the first half of this because of children. They need to go
my
back
live
to school.
view
No,
is
just
always
kidding.
on replay, so you can
I know.
definitely catch
No,
it later.
I know. I definitely will. I started to watch it after the fact because I was like,
Okay.
Well, let's go there next then. So you've been doing these Facebook Live events, and I want to sort of get a read on where folks are. but before that, I want to talk about accessibility and transparency and availability. When I think of when I think of the school board and our engagement in it, our oldest is 10, so we haven't been like. That's another one of those things that we failed to be taught when we were coming up was whether you have kids or not, you are a stakeholder in the school system and you should care. Like we didn't get taught that.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
do you want to know why? Do you want to know why? If you're out there listening and you don't know why, do you want to know why? So you don't have idiots, adults that won't wear a fucking mask when it's obvious that we should all be wearing masks. Sorry. We want a highly educated public. That's because
Correct.
when then everybody gets better. Anyway,
All boats lifted with rising water thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and then some.
Yeah, the school board is your rising water.
Yeah.
That's me.
If we
Is
should be
it ever?
if we should be dumping money anywhere, it's into
Oh,
public schools.
no
Anyway,
kidding. Okay.
so but
Watch out,
to
she's gonna
me,
get on another one.
to me, I wasn't engaged because God, when we talked to Jared, this happened too. Like all the threads just tie in together from one thing to the next. Do you know why I wasn't engaged in local school board? Same reason I haven't been engaged in the city council, or the county commission, or the.
I know.
Go ahead.
Because you're too bogged down with work
Yep.
and life
Yep.
that you don't have time, and all the meetings are never when they're convenient.
They're convenient for people in the 30s. Like seriously, like you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 or whatever, and so you're free on Thursday night at 7:00. Guess who's not free on Thursday night at 7:00?
Parents.
I hit that with a
Ugh.
community group. I was campaigning, and I'm a full-time teacher, so I'm campaigning while teaching. And this was before COVID. And this person invited me to a Thursday luncheon. They have Thursday luncheons every other week, and it was at noon. And I was like, I'm a full-time teacher, so I'll be happy to do that in summer. And that's something that as a teacher I can say that there's a lot of people like they will never be able to join your Thursday luncheon community
Right.
group ever. That's never going to happen for them. And so it frustrates me. But when we look at like school advisory councils, every school is supposed to have one. We're supposed to offer them at multiple times, but almost always every school ends up with like the fourth Wednesday or the third Tuesday and it's a morning. And if you're driving to work at 8:00 in the morning, you're not going to school advisory council.
Yep.
And the school board meetings, I am super involved in school board, but they start at 5 and they're in Bartow and I live in Davenport.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So and I work till 4:15.
Yep.
And Polk
So
County's
I'm
the
always
size
gonna
of
miss the first
Delaware.
20 minutes.
Oh God, Polk County is a bitch to drive through. I
Dude.
used to think Orlando was shit. Polk County is like what?
Right. It's just huge. It's just huge. But
Besides Rhode Island.
so that's what I like from things that I'm seeing in what I guess we'll call the new school board, the new generation, and that is right the Billy Townsends of the group going live on Facebook like you're doing, he's doing. If I can't
Well,
catch
I mean,
it live,
fair. He and I are both campaigning right now, but he's also super accessible,
Yeah.
even when
Yes.
he's not campaigning.
yes,
Yeah.
and that needs to continue. That needs to carry. I mean, school board meetings weren't archived, recorded on the YouTube for the longest, like
Right.
until quite recently, and that's insane. Like I may not be able to be there in person. I may not even be able to watch it live, but I work overnight.
Mhm.
I'll flip that sucker on at 3:00 in the morning while I'm eating my lunch
Yeah.
or whatever and watch the school board. Sure, that's exactly what I do. So that we're finally leveraging some of that like obvious technology that we're decades behind on implementing. But you know, but it's that sort of transparency and accessibility. The thing that I've always loved about Billy is and Bob Doyle sat across the table from us in 2016,
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah.
And said, you need to talk to Billy Townsend. I think you guys would get along really well. And I didn't think anything about it. I just let it go. And then here we are, right? Now,
Yep.
things come full circle. And you can go back on all of his writings, stuff that's going on, that he's just a prolific writer and communicates in a way that, like, I feel like I'm looped in, even though I can't be there physically. And I love that, and I want us to keep doing it. And I think that's obviously something that you will do.
Yeah, I because this will be my full-time job, that is something I think that sets me apart from my opponent. She has a company she runs, that's her thing. This is my full-time job, and part of my platform, part of my campaign is helping our community be informed about what's happening in education in Polk County. What laws are about to be passed that are going to negatively impact your kids? Because not everybody has time to breathe in and think about every single possible proposed law before it happens. I can't keep up with every law that's happening, but I definitely can look at education laws, sort of sum them up and share them out. And if it's gonna hurt our kids, or if I think it's gonna hurt our kids in our schools, push for people to be calling their legislators, because that focused pressure is what actually changes things. And you can stop bad crap from happening before it happens if you know that it's coming. But you can't if it's passed and then you're hurt and you're like, wait, what happened? Where'd that come from? We know what laws are coming up because they have to talk through them in committees and they have to approve them. Like, there's this whole big, nice process that we have. The bureaucracy gives you time to stop stuff that shouldn't be happening if you are knowledgeable about it.
Yep. And a lot of
That's part of what our board needs to do.
Yeah. A lot of that is just knowing, like, again, being able to be engaged in some way. I think it's hard for people to know what's going on in Tallahassee when you're not in Tallahassee. Again, the way the state is and set up, like, it's hard to keep on top of all of that stuff. And that's when you get, different organizations that have their focuses. And, like with ours, we're always watching for discriminatory bills that come down that are harmful to the LGBTQ community or secular people. And we have someone in the House who is very questionable. She calls herself the Demon Buster, and she filed a bill in 2017 that would have essentially copied down federal law protecting students and educators' rights to, like, express belief in coursework, or for students to express belief in coursework, or wear religious iconography, that you have a right to religious expression in the school.
Right.
And so it basically just copied that into state law and was kind of useless. But she was up on the steps with her big ass banner that said, "Let's put prayer back in school." Right. So she was spinning it as, like, this is all about, we're going to get God back into our schools.
Okay, so right now in law, kids are allowed to pray.
Yep.
Teachers are allowed to pray. You just cannot lead them.
We're all okay with that.
Yeah.
You're allowed to wear iconography. You're allowed to bring your religious books if you'd like. All of that is perfectly well within law and perfectly acceptable. Kids can talk to each other about religion. But I do not want, there are so many different denominations and so many different groups and religious affiliations that people can possibly have. That should be left to the parents. That is not something that I want teachers pushing on our kids, regardless of what direction it is, because there are so many different, even if it's all within Christianity, but there's different breakdowns of groups there. My sister and I had this conversation. We grew up Methodist. That was my family's background. And she went to a private Baptist college. And she called me crying one day because she didn't think she had been baptized because she hadn't been submerged in water. Methodists don't do that. We just do a shell of water on the head. And she called me crying one day because she was worried that she wasn't actually baptized. That shouldn't be something that our K through 12 kids are worried about.
Right.
And are my beliefs wrong? Is my family wrong? Have I done something wrong because their teacher believes something different than them? And so for me, that should not be something that we're doing. Kids talking to each other about religion, that's life. We want them having good conversations about life and their beliefs and what they think and feel. That's a good thing.
Yep.
But teachers are in a position of power, and that's a totally different conversation.
Yep.
Sorry.
The same representative, Demon Buster Daniels, also filed the National Motto Display Act, which you'll all recall was pushed through using the deaths at Parkland to put in "God We Trust" on all of our schools. Like that's going to protect them from a shooting.
Right.
And then she twice, the past 2 sessions, filed and failed the Bible class bill. And that's one that I have been very concerned about, because there's examples of other states, fuck you Texas, other states who have implemented this under the guise of, we're going to teach it as literature. And then, like, investigative journalists have gone in and found that, well, turns out they're not teaching it quite so objectively after all. Who's surprised, right? So, but that plays to your point of, like, this was my question back to, if you're a religious person or a religious leader and you're for that bill, whose doctrine are we gonna teach? You're a Methodist. Well, we're going to use the Baptist doctrine. We're going to use, the Catholics are going to lose their minds because we're not teaching Catholic doctrine. We're teaching them about Protestant doctrine. Like, they're even within the religion, that should be a red flag to you, that if you want someone to teach your children about religion, it should be you. So that you get it, what you want them to get.
We look at politics, and over the years, we found wedge issues where there's not going to actually ever be movement in one direction or other at this point. And so we just keep talking about it because it pulls people towards us, or it pushes people away from us that we don't like. And that's one of them. The law is fairly settled there, and I feel like it came down fairly equitably of, you're allowed to have your beliefs, your opinions, you can talk about them. All of that is perfectly acceptable. You're just not allowed to put them on other people.
Right.
And I feel like that meets that freedom component that most people are looking for. And it allows people to have a belief and an opinion without it being something that is pushed by the state. I think that having the state pushing something towards people is an issue.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Well, and again, like the court has decided on that it's okay for you to teach about the Bible. And for me, if you want to have a comparative world religions course, like, let's stack them up. Put this book and that book, and here's the Greek gods, and here, like, put it all together. Right. Teach them all.
We have some of that in our standards now, and that's part of what I think some people miss. So like I said, I'm 6th grade science, but 6th grade social studies, this world history class, part of that is teaching the roots of Judeo and Abrahamic beliefs, because that has impacted world history. Yep. That's something that you have to understand, where that came from, the growth of that religion, what area it came from. Would you like to understand the Israeli-Palestine conflict? You have to understand growth of religion to do that. Yep. We already do teach faith backgrounds and beliefs and how they impact history. I'm okay with having comparative religions and looking at religious texts. That's not a bad thing. Knowledge is good.
Yes.
Just not spoken as belief from a power source where kids now feel like their personal beliefs are being attacked.
Yeah.
Kids should feel safe to go to school and be accepted for who they are in their schools, regardless of their religion, regardless of tons of other statuses that our kids have. And I don't know why we would want kids to not feel safe and accepted in their schools.
Yes.
So,
while we're talking about controversial topics, so we know that you are the evidence-based, science-based candidate. What is the current state, and what are your thoughts on sex ed in our schools?
So currently we teach abstinence as um, the the end all be all of protection in schools. We also teach biology basics, so like egg, sperm, they get together. That is where you get a zygote.
Do
From
a
a
little
zygote, you grow a
dance.
fetus. Like
Make a little
all of
dance.
those fun technical terms that make it seem like this far off away thing that would never happen. Which realistically actually so when we look at the data for sex education, if we want to reduce teen pregnancy, if we want to reduce community-wide STIs, so sexually transmitted infections, if we want to allow our kids to understand consent around their bodies and teach them those types of things, comprehensive, age-appropriate, scientific, literate sex education is the thing that does that. What we do right now, abstinence-only education, increases teen pregnancies, it increases community-wide STIs because it's not like you get STI information later in life. You get it in school or you don't get it at all unless you have parents that are willing to talk to you about it. And so those kids grow up to be adults who also don't understand how they're getting infections because they've never been taught. There are instances of fully grown adults washing out and reusing condoms.
Oh my God.
Because we have not taught scientifically accurate information. Now, do I think that our sixth graders need to know all the ins and outs of how? Maybe not, probably not. Age appropriate is where that part comes in. You can start with kids in elementary school with things like understanding that if someone touches you, you have the right to say, please don't. And then if they don't listen to that, you go tell your mommy and daddy. Start there.
Yep.
Like that early part of your body is yours and you choose who touches it is a way to prevent child sexual abuse. Like we have so much data around age appropriate comprehensive sex ed that it reduces so many things that we have been trying to reduce for a very long time. And we have a solution. We just don't like it. And so as a science teacher, age appropriate, scientifically literate sex education for our kids is very important.
Speaking of data, would it surprise anyone to know that Polk County's teen pregnancy and STI, STD rate trends, are kind of higher than normal?
Yeah.
Oh,
Now, I will say there is one really good thing, even among counties and states that have abstinence only, and that's a Florida thing. That's not a Polk County thing.
yep.
With the rise of internet and technology, you actually have an overall trend of lower teen pregnancies and lower STIs countrywide, because even though parents have been pushing and schools have been pushing for this only limited scope, kids want to know things.
Yeah.
And even if it's not kids, as you get to be 18, 19, 20, and things have gone wrong for you,
Hey, Alexa.
you have a source to find information. And so it sucks that they start with things go wrong and now I need to go figure out what's happening to me. But we have sources of information now that previously we didn't. And so we're seeing an overall reduction in that, even in places that are abstinence only. It's just more reduced in places that have comprehensive.
Right.
So your kids are getting the information regardless. Do you want it to be from a teacher or a nurse that is fully comprehensive knowledge, or do you want it to be from random internet sources?
Yeah.
Which could be good or not.
Right.
Depends on the day.
I'll tell you what, in my case, the internet was better. Until mom found my browser history on the family computer.
Hey, let's take a quick break for a commercial announcement, huh?
Okay.
Oh.
There you go.
Nice.
All right, that's
Yes.
it.
Oh my gosh.
This is what I wanted.
I
This is
know.
what God, when we first started our nonprofit, this was a conversation that came up about comprehensive sex ed, came up early on, of being something that we are that we care about, that we're passionate about, because one, we're skeptics and scientifically minded people, and we want to use evidence backed curriculum and that sort of thing. Like, we want all of that to be rooted in reality, um, and that from a humanist perspective, right? We know that I was invited to speak at a teen pregnancy faith leaders event, teen pregnancy prevention faith leaders event. It was very interesting, but it was, I mean, the majority of the room was, well, yes, we teach abstinence only. Can we sit down at the table and talk about, like, for serious, like, we need to have a conversation about this, because we know if you want these outcomes to improve, we know how to do it. We know how to do it. Now, if we can meet in the middle, and you in your church or whatever teach that spiritually, right, from a God's morality perspective, this is what you should do for your eternal soul. You need to wait until you're married, and you need to, all of these things, right? But I'm going to let you teach in school the age appropriate, comprehensive information. They're going to have sex one day, if it's not now. If I want you to wait until you get married because of Jesus, when you do when you do have sex for the first time, I want you to know how it all works. I want you to know what you're doing. I don't want it to be a negative experience. I don't want it to be a surprise. I don't want, notwithstanding all of the things about, like, informing our young people, that also prevents abuses and all of that stuff, just from a you should know how their body works perspective.
Yeah. No, that that goes back to the piece I was on before. Parents have a lot of control, and should have a lot of control about what happens with their kid and their life, and I get that. But kids also have the right to have a comprehensive education, because at some point they're not kids anymore, they're adults.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be able to make data-based and sound decisions for their lives based on good information. And especially for education that is being paid for with tax dollars. While I fully understand that parents are sort of the sole arbiters of what their child is exposed to, that doesn't mean that our schools shouldn't, at the very least, be offering data-based, scientific-backed information for kids, because they grow into adults that have to make decisions for their lives. And at that point, the parent is not in charge anymore. And the kid needs the information to make good choices for their lives. So
I think that comes right back to what we were talking about having a highly educated, well-informed adult public. Like, that's the if there's a bottom line driving factor for a quality public education system, it's that, and this is just another sort of piece of that puzzle. So
Yep.
so we started talking about the Facebook Lives that you've been doing. What is the read? How are people feeling right now? What sort of questions are you getting? I know there's a lot of interest and uncertainty around reopening schools, so I'm sure that sort of dominates it.
It really does.
But how are those going?
They are going pretty well. I go live every week. I go live Friday at 6 every week, regardless of what else is going on. I don't think I've canceled one yet, because that consistency means that people know when I'm on and they can ask questions. But most of my time on there, like, I spend 10 minutes maybe doing just like what I want to talk about. The rest of the time is questions. And it hasn't failed yet. I can fill an entire hour just answering questions, which helps me see that this is a need in our community. I would not be able to fill an hour of content with just questions if there weren't community members and parents and even teachers. Teachers are not very well informed about what's going on in our schools sometimes. And so that need is wide. And I haven't had like, I was actually expecting trolls and people asking like really awful questions or coming in and like being completely off topic or crate. I haven't had any of that. Even this one this was my first time that I've actually done a paid advertisement on Facebook. And I've been getting consistent people every week regardless. But this one sort of doubled that crowd. Even with the advertisement, no trolls, no people showing up being awful, which has been really nice. Like I feel people are wanting someone with education background. I feel like people are wanting someone who's willing to respond to them, who's willing to sit down and answer questions. And when I don't know, I've hit a few questions that I'm like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out and I'll talk to you next week.
Yep.
Because I will be back next week, and I think that consistency is something that people are liking. I'm getting good reads on it now. It might be a little biased because it's me and it's my campaign, but I feel like it is something that's needed. It's something that's necessary. Even teachers that I teach with at my school, they know that they can always email me or call me. I'm still getting like some of them coming on and asking questions. Like, guys, you could have texted me yesterday. Like, why are you waiting? But it's things that they know other people want to know. Is this going to happen during reopening? Is that going to happen during reopening? What does the governor's pay plan mean? I don't really understand what's happening with that. And all of these huge questions, you have to have someone who is informed about them to be able to answer them. And you have to have someone who is then accessible to people and where people feel like they can ask without being ridiculed or being called stupid for not knowing. And that is hard to do right now. We don't really have that in a lot of places in our society. I want to fix that at least in education. I can't fix that everywhere. I don't know everything about everything, but I know a whole ton about education and I follow it like a hawk. And so if I don't know it, it's probably not something that a lot of people know at all, but I will find it for you. And I think that is resonating pretty well with people that I talk to on Facebook. Part of the easiest way for me to sort of talk about that, I started campaigning in February. I set up my Facebook page in February. We're at 1,200 people have liked the Facebook page. This is a Polk County School Board race. This is not like a House of Reps race. This is not a Senate race. This is a school board race. And I have outstripped on my Facebook page some of our House of Representatives members who have Facebook pages. Wow. I have more engagement than some of our people who are legislators. Our school board meeting on Tuesday, we had 500 people send emails to the school board, and at 3 minutes apiece, that is 25 hours of public comment. We literally couldn't get it all. But that is from building power.
I know,
mine
didn't get read.
That's why I went in person, because I had been telling people for 2 weeks. They'll be having their meeting, email them, ask them questions. But even when the school board takes questions in that public comment, they don't respond. It's public comment time. You should be getting a response, or at least we'll get back to you later. I will say, our PR teams have gotten better at that. I have gotten, because I do public comment all the time on school board meetings. I've gotten several emails back from some of our district administrators. I got an email back from Dr. Steinke, who's over the head of ESE, for one of my questions about ESE services. So I'm going to give props there. They are starting to answer questions from public comment, but that didn't happen until someone called them out on it 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's not right. Like that,
No.
again, it all leads back into this accessibility piece where our leaders we're going to hold you accountable to the role that you've been selected into, and we should be able to call you up and have a chat. And if not even that, and that there are. If not even that, then that is the function of the public comments at the board meeting. Like, it's not just, okay, we're going to let the public say some things and put them in the record. Okay, next order of business. Like, pretend it didn't happen.
Right. That
Maybe if I listen and pretend I'm caring, it'll just go away.
Right. But not even that.
No, yeah.
So let's talk about the school board
Oh
meeting.
my God.
Because holy
That was
shit. Listen,
Ooh.
I felt bad. I felt bad for Lisa. I felt bad for Billy. And then you had to follow that. And I was like, God damn it. And Anita's just up there like hitting all of the evidence points. Like you were just you were hitting the point. But the comment that came before you was just hanging so thick in the air. I had to like rewind it and watch it again because I was still going like, what the fuck just happened? What just happened here? Oh my God.
For me,
What was in your head while you were spitting that out?
There's a huge contentious relationship piece there.
Mhm.
And for the most part, for me, I am trying to sort of stay above the fray and just making sure that I'm staying focused on our community, our kids, because we have so much that we actually need to be working on and talking about. And even if we do want to bring up race within our schools, cool, let's talk about the suspension rates of Black and brown children.
Yep.
Like there's so many really good things we need to talk about. I would like to talk about those. And so that is where I have sort of tried to stay. If you look at comment, like I have not commented anywhere because that is a super separate thing from what I am trying to accomplish, which is covering staffing for our kids and making sure that our ESE and ESOL kids are getting what they need and making sure that we have scientifically literate adults and making sure that people are safe when they go back to schools. And like there's this plethora of things that we need to accomplish.
Yep.
And so that is where I'm staying.
I think you're right. I think like my takeaway was my general like what the hell just happened here was what a distraction from I thought we were talking about like return to school. I thought that was the focus of the meeting.
Right.
We were going to talk because that seems to be a real pressing thing right now.
Right.
Like time wise.
So that is an interesting piece. I do want to talk about that. When you talk about the agenda for school board, right? The agenda for the school board meeting is the board members can ask to have things added, but the board chair and the superintendent control the agenda. There were only two things on the agenda, and neither of them was opening schools.
Ooh. Really?
The two things on the agenda were the calendar.
Right.
Which that is how when I went and talked, I was speaking on an agenda item, and that agenda item was the calendar. And I talked about readdressing the calendar if we needed to based on the data. That is how I got through to talk on the agenda.
Right.
But one item was the agenda and the other was a superintendent search. And there was not anything on the agenda about the safety of opening schools.
That's disappointing.
And the overwhelming majority of the people who wrote in to comment was about the safety of opening schools.
I believe it.
The board chair is the person I'm running against, and she controls the agenda for the meeting. And while I very much think that the superintendent search is incredibly important, and pushing back the calendar, that was important, I think we might have needed an agenda item about opening schools safely so that people could talk about it on the agenda and not just in general comments.
Yep.
But I do think that most people in the public thought that the meeting was about opening schools safely.
You're right.
Because that's the most pressing educational issue for this county right now.
Yep.
But it wasn't even on the agenda. It wasn't even added as an emergency item. The original only item was the superintendent search. The calendar was added after the work session.
And the only thing that came out of the let's address the superintendent search was there is this odd movement to talk Superintendent Byrd out of retirement. Like, And that
I
whole
think
thing
that
is weird
she's done
too.
some good things.
I know there's
I think she's
yeah.
had a few missteps, but I also think that she's allowed to retire.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's my piece.
Right.
Yeah.
She's put in 32 years. 30 is standard for an educator to retire.
Yep.
And then if you look at our Florida retirement system and how it works, you get an average of your last 5 years of salary. And
Yep.
she has spent how many years being a superintendent? Oh, right, 5. And so she's hit where she's likely to be for her highest
Yep.
pay as a like it
Right.
makes the years and the service time makes perfect sense. And then she listed all of these accomplishments she's made and the goals that she set for herself and made.
Yep.
And she gets to live a happy life with her family.
Okay.
And I think it's a little bit arrogant to ask her to stay when she has decided with her family to retire.
Right.
She's allowed to retire. If somebody told me I'm not allowed to retire, when I say I'm retiring,
Right.
I'd be a little bit happy.
So I have a question.
Okay.
How often are these school board meetings?
Oh, that's a fun question. It probably didn't seem like it was, but it really is. They used to be. They used to be 2 a month. And then at some point, there was a conversation about how it was too much. And so they went down to 1 a month.
Still
And
once a
then
month?
during this emergency crisis time, we had a few board members, I think Sarah called them the newer generation board,
Yes.
that pushed to have us go back to 2 a month for a little while because we're in the middle of a global pandemic and we might need some extra input here. Maybe, I don't know. But so we're back to 2 a month for a time. I would like for that to be 2 a month going forward. I think that it's important because the board needs time to actually talk to each other. Sunshine laws prevent them from talking to each other outside of board for anything that's in front of the board. Like they can have a coffee and talk to each other about soap operas, but they can't have a conversation about what's happening in front of the board.
Right.
And so yeah, it's 2 a month. It's not a crazy amount.
So
and that was something I covered in my live tonight.
Am I wrong? Am I misremembering? Is Jackie Bird retiring in February? Is that okay?
That's what she said.
So
She said she was going to retire in February.
July, August, September, October, November, December. That's like more than 6 months away, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. But that's a pressing matter to put on the agenda.
Right.
Now, I actually will say it is something we need on the agenda.
It's important.
I will say wholeheartedly we do.
Well,
because having a nationwide search for a superintendent, that is a long drawn out process and normally can take up to a year. And so we actually are starting on the wrong end, and having a community listening time for what people want to see is great and is really good. But you first have to let them get out what they need to say about the pandemic, and then have
nobody cares who's running the school board if the kids aren't gonna survive school to go.
Yeah, it would have been great if people were focused on that as something that's on their minds. Yeah. Call a special session if you need to. We're going to have a special meeting, and the only thing we're going to talk about is return to school.
Well, they had that concept and they were going to do it live, and then it got dropped, and then it got moved, and there was some stuff that happened there.
Yeah.
That was the concept. They moved it to this time, and they put it at Jim Miles so that they could hold it live. And then, so
I'll be interested to see how this survey data comes back. So we're talking a lot of internal shit back and forth with you because we all know what's going on. There's folks that are watching or listening that are like, I don't understand. I'm not from Polk County. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So I'm not going to get into all the backstory of the board and the superintendent and all of the drama that's going on there. But when we look at reopening schools and how that's going to work out, we're 3 options on the table to choose from. Go back to school brick and mortar, do an e-school option that's tethered to the school that you are already in, which is our choice because we have our kids in a magnet. And then the Polk virtual school, which is it would be essentially a transfer to a different school. It's a completely different autonomous thing. And so the survey's gone out. Hey, parents, soon to be hey, teachers. What do y'all think? What do you want to do? My concern about this is I didn't look at it. Becca filled them out this time. But the last one we got, was, how do you feel about restarting school in the fall? And my feedback was, I don't know. You're asking me in June. Like, August is a long damn time away. And this thing has been changing like a lot and quickly. And I can't tell you right now. I have no answers for you. So I want to know, as parents, what are your choice? Like, what do you want to do? What are you feeling right now? But also, I think it would be interesting to have a subset of that data that says, okay, you chose, I want my kids back in brick and mortar schools. Did you select that because you want your kids back in brick and mortar schools, or do you have no other option? I'd like to know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I have lots of friends that, from our kids' school, and the general consensus is the parents that are able to and that, can stay home are staying home.
Yep.
And they're putting their kid in e-school. And one mom worded it, she said, because I can, I feel like I'm obligated to, so that the kids that can't stay home, so that there's less of a risk for the kids that have to go back. And that just broke me. Like, why are we having to make these choices?
Right.
That risk mitigation, so that's something we've talked about a little bit several times here, is so powerful, because that is communal action mitigating risk. Like, that's what that conversation is. And so I think that those collections of parents might be a good option for parents that can't, but also we are going to have some parents that need brick and mortar, but if we only have 5% of parents that need brick and mortar, not that are choosing it because they want it, but because they literally, like, I am a single dad nurse, right?
Yep.
And I spend 4 days a week pulling 12-hour shifts at night. And I am providing a vital service to our community. And I cannot stay home with my second grader, right? Those kids might need brick and mortar, and our schools helping provide that with educators that are willing to go in and do that is good. And we should be doing that. But giving it as entirely parent option doesn't get you that. Entirely parent option gets you 30% of people back in schools. And now we haven't reduced, we've reduced the risk some, but it's not safer. It's not where it needs to be to actually mitigate that risk. And so that's where I get frustrated, because there is need for brick and mortar, but it's not need for brick and mortar 30-45%.
Right.
It's need for brick and mortar in some cases. And this is something we saw in New York State. This is something we saw in, I want to say it was Arizona. All of their YMCAs opened up for parents that were specifically either healthcare or some other type of required service for community safety and health, right? We can do that, and we can open it up to vital. And I'm not saying every job, because we've sort of had this concept that no one is not necessary. Like, the Zaxby's worker is a vital piece. I mean, yes, but also no. Like, no one dies if there's not a Zaxby's.
Yep.
Now, grocery stores, we have to be able to feed ourselves. That's a vital piece. Nurses and doctors and healthcare workers, those are vital pieces. We have vital workers, and then we have workers we'd like to work to be able to function within normal-ish society.
Yep.
And then we have optional jobs that we really like to have, but that we probably shouldn't have during a pandemic at all. Providing childcare / academic services for those vital people in brick and mortar because they cannot find another way to do it would be a great thing for our schools to do. But we cannot do that if we open it up to entirely parent choice, where half of them decide to go back, because that's not risk management. That's not keeping community health in check. And so that's where I get frustrated. Like, let's send the survey. The survey is useful, but I don't need to know what do you want to do. I need to know what can you absolutely cannot live without.
Right.
Those are two different conversations. So, but that's operational, and that's part of the superintendent, unless the board makes policy, and then it's part of the board. And that's where that strangeness of power comes in.
And-
If the board makes a policy about it, it's the board. And if the board doesn't make a policy about it, it's operational.
And
Which means we have to, I don't know, collaborate on things and come up with good solutions.
and
Say it again. Collaborate.
And therein lies the struggle. Here's what worries me about all of this. Like, I mean, I feel like we haven't done shows regularly enough, and it's just so freaking much to talk about. And there's so much going on. But on my mind, while I haven't been putting it out into this thing as regularly, on my mind, we've been thinking a lot about systemic racism in the wake of the George Floyd murders and the civil unrest and all of the things that's sort of coming out of that. And there's just there's a higher level of consciousness around these issues. And so when I think about, like, okay, let's go to reopen schools, let's go back to my privilege conversation from earlier, right? We're designing a system here where the privileged are going to keep their kids home. And that's going to create a situation where the kids who can't stay home, who are more likely from a lower income family, who may be at higher risk, who may not have adequate health care to start with, who just that really concerns me when I think about, like, and that's going to affect families of color more than it is going to affect white families. And that's just the fact and reality.
Right.
I just go back to, what is next year going to look like? If we open right now and all these kids and all these teachers go back, or half, let's say half go back and half stay home, what does next year look like? I sat my kid down and I told him, listen, this is what's going on. We're going to do e-school for at least the first 9 weeks because of COVID, and we can't get sick. And so, and while he was like, why? It didn't want to have anything to do with it. You know, you sit down and have that conversation, then, and he goes into his, God, what is his vigilante social justice warrior mode.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Ridiculous. And I hope none of my friends and teachers go back to school. I don't want them to get sick. Like, but then
got a 10-year-old thinking about this kind of stuff.
But fast forward, next school year, when everything's back to normal, how many empty seats are we going to have? How many classrooms are we going to be desperately looking to find a replacement teacher? And we were already short on teachers in this fucking county.
Every year.
What the hell are we going to do?
Those classroom inequities, even so, what COVID has done is it is definitely creating more inequity, but it's also shining a bright light on inequity that already existed, right? So I have conversations with my colleagues and with other teachers about, like, the digital divide between our kids. And because teachers are just inherently, we are college educated people. We are normally median-ish income for whatever area we're living in. I know that we talk about teacher pay, but we're median income. Teachers specifically are almost not ever living at or below the poverty line. Now, there are definitely circumstances where that's not true, and there are some teachers that do, but we're normally median income, right? And so we live in, most teachers live in at least some amount of privilege. And we assume that kids have things like internet, and we assume that kids have things like devices, and we assume that kids have things like someone to help them with their homework. And there's all of these assumptions built in that unless you have, as an educator, examined your privileges and where you were coming from, you might not see. And so people will like assign homework, and it's to finish the PowerPoint slides that you got at school today. That was pre-COVID. You can't finish a PowerPoint slides if you don't have a computer. But let's say you do have a computer. Microsoft Office Suite is its own thing.
Yep.
And some computers have them and some computers don't.
And it's expensive.
Right. And then also you saved it in the cloud, which requires you to have internet access to your computer. And so this digital divide already existed. And I've had hundreds of conversations with knowledgeable and educated adults about kids not having equity at home. And I'm finally getting through to a lot of the people that I've had those conversations with, because they couldn't get their kids to do the work that they assigned during COVID. It's like, right. But I'll just use Sarah's name. But Sarah lives with her grandmother, and her grandmother does not have internet. And she's like, but she's responding to me on Microsoft Teams. It's like, right, because she has a phone.
Yep.
She has a phone with a data plan that's not going to allow her to do the work that you've assigned her. She can respond to you. That does not mean she can do the work that you gave her. And so all of a sudden, these conversations are widening up. So that for me is sort of a silver lining in COVID, is that systems of inequality and systems of inequity that are facing our communities, whether that's poverty-based, whether that's racially based, whether that is language division, we are seeing those in stark contrast right now in ways that are sometimes overcome in brick and mortar schools, not always. That inequity is still there. But in my classroom with me as your teacher, we all have iPads and internet access, because I have an iPad card in my classroom, and there's 25 of them, and there's 25 of you. And so everyone in here has an iPad and internet access. And so that inequity is gone inside my room. And so COVID is definitely creating inequality, but it's pretty much mostly just shining a light on what already existed.
Right. Yeah.
And so while I think that there will be gaps there for kids when we come back, I don't think they're going to be any better or worse than they were previously, just because that inequality already existed. The kid who didn't have a parent to help them with their homework at home still doesn't have that. And so that inequality is still there. The kid who doesn't have digital access at home still doesn't have that. But the cool thing is, our county is doing internet buses around in specifically poverty-stricken communities.
That is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like, and that is something that is an out-of-the-box fix. And I know that it's not the best thing on the planet. I had a teacher complaining the other day. They're like, but now the kid has to go sit somewhere where they can get to the internet and they can vote. Right. It's still not equitable. You are entirely 100% correct. But it is more access than that kid has ever had. So no, it's not perfect. It's not exactly where we want to be, but it's a start. It is inching towards something better. And when we realized that 40% of our kids in Polk County do not have an adequate device to do schoolwork, we gave out hundreds of thousands of devices. We spent $10 million or something like that, a significant amount, on buying new devices in Polk County for COVID, because we didn't have enough, because we're not a 1-to-1 technology ratio county. Now, that's something I'd like to get to, but that costs money, and money comes from Tallahassee, and that's a whole nother round of things.
Maybe we'll be closer after COVID. We got all those devices now.
We can talk about Tallahassee. We can talk about taxes, and how, speaking of inequity, the shining light on what's already there. What again? I think what worries me is that it takes what already exists, but it's also then sending these kids into a situation where they're in person, when we'd prefer that if they were any other way that they not be, right? So it exposes them to a greater risk of possible transmission.
And it definitely does.
And that's the thing that, like, if there's something that weighs on my mind and heart, it's that, like, that there are just, I'm the macro again, but I'm furious that we're just parents, that the families that just don't have any freaking options when we could, like the internet access thing. We could solve that. If you can drive a bus into neighborhoods and set up a Wi-Fi hotspot, we can solve this problem. Gonna take a little money. Gonna need somebody to give us some money.
We're gonna need some more bus drivers too.
But no, I mean, like you could
Always need bus drivers.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That was the joke.
Well, every year we start out short bus drivers and educators.
I get the phone call every year. If you can take your child to school for the first week, that would ease the.
Yeah.
What?
Yep. But
Next year it's going to be if you could teach your child for the first week. First 9 weeks.
But this is the other thing that I don't know if I'm going to be like if I'm going to be a positive person here, is that while all of this is going on, like it's the spirit of American ingenuity, right? Like that we'll find ways to work around stuff as even with the limitations that we have. Like we'll figure out something. Well, kids can't go to school. Kids don't have access to the internet. All right. Everybody around the table, let's figure out something. It ain't gonna be great. It ain't gonna be what we want it to do, but like, let's just figure out something that will work in the meantime. And now we've done it. There's a proof of concept. If that needs to be done again or modified or in some other whatever like that, we have that now on the books as, hey, we made this thing happen. So down the road that could come in handy. Let's talk about you sort of mentioned a key difference between you and your opponent. Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that set you apart?
Sure. So, one of the biggest pieces, and one that I'm hoping has sort of shined in the hour and 40 something minutes we've been talking, is I have an education background. I have data driven and research and knowledge. Like that's a huge piece that I bring to the table. And I'm not going to say my opponent doesn't have that knowledge, and but she doesn't share it if she does. Like that's a piece. One of the things that I bring to the table is this drive to share what I know. That's part of why I'm a teacher. I want, like, if I know something and I know that other people knowing it will make the world a better place, I want to share it. That's the definition of being a teacher. I have 2 tattoos on my body. On my left forearm, it says grow knowledge, and on the right, it says find truth. Those are like my guiding pieces. And I bring that to my position on the board. I also bring showing up. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit trite. But the joke, and this was way before I ever planned on running. I taught in District 2, which is where I worked, and that's where I live now. And the joke was that my opponent, who's been on the board for 16 years, didn't really always go to meetings. Like, it was funny, will she show up? And so we went back and looked. Like, some meetings they take attendance, work sessions they don't. 32. Between 2007 and now, she has missed 32 school board meetings.
What?
Whoa.
We talked earlier, right, about how often they happen. They used to happen twice a month, and then for a while they happened once a month. 32 from 2007 to now.
Wow.
So let's just start with, how about I'll show up to meetings? Like, I can't guarantee I won't get the flu one day and miss one, but I will regularly show up to meetings, and I promise that the people that I serve will not joke about whether or not I will be there, because I will be there. Like, just starting there, showing up to meetings. And then from there, bringing knowledge base that I have, talking about it, sharing it, and hopefully being able to collaborate and build those partnerships. She has really good partnerships with the community. That's actually something she brings to the table. The problem is she doesn't utilize it at the table. And so you have these partnerships, and that's awesome. You've had 16 years to put those partnerships to good use. I would like to see them being used. I can build partnerships, but until you build partnerships and use them, you're not doing us any good. So those are sort of the pieces I bring. Knowledge, a want to share it, showing up, and then also utilizing the partnerships and relationships that I build. That's how I'm growing my campaign now. It's growing because I've built partnerships around the county.
Yep. And that you're out and accessible and, engaging in the community, and you're using technology and all of those things. Well, guess what district we're in? Now, we should probably explain how school board districts work here in Polk County, and all of that. If you want to get into like your district, what it covers, how all of that works.
So Polk County School Board is divided into 7 districts. There's 7 school board members. Each school board member has to live in the district that they serve. So I'm in District 2. That's Haines City, Davenport, up to Four Corners, all the way through the Ridge down into a good portion of Lake Wales. But it's sort of this northeast corner of Polk County. However, just because District 2 is there and that person who is running has to live in that district does not mean that that's the only people that can vote. It is a whole county election. There are 3 seats open for vote this round. It's District 1, 2. I don't remember what Sarah Beth's district is, but she's running unopposed, so it doesn't matter. I think she's 3, but she's running unopposed, so that's her seat. But the 2 competitive races we have within this election cycle are District 1 and District 2.
Right.
But the fun thing is that you get to pick one for each of those 2 positions because it is a whole county vote. And so even though I have to live in District 2, you don't. You can live in Fort Meade, you can live in Frostproof, you can live in Mulberry. It does not matter. Anyone who lives in Polk County, and it doesn't matter your party affiliation either, because this is a nonpartisan race. Yep. So Republicans, Democrats, NPAs, anyone in the county that goes and votes in the primaries, the school board elections will be on your primary ballot, regardless of your affiliation or your geographic space.
We're I'm trying to think. Where are we? Is the 20th the deadline to register to vote in the primary?
I believe yes. That I have it written down somewhere in a calendar, but I believe the 20th is the primary registration.
So you got a couple days left. Get on it.
Yes,
please get on
already.
it.
And we're our nonprofit. We're going to host a voter registration drive later on to push for the primary or to push for the general election. Maybe coming out of some primary results and use that as a springboard to have that conversation to vote and register to vote by mail. Because we don't, again, like you can't ask me, hey, and it's Sarah, it's June. What do you want to do in August? I don't know. Hey, Sarah, it's July. What are you going to do in November? Beats the hell out of me. But if I'm going
to vote.
Yeah, I'm going to vote. Yep. Even if I can't go, even if I can't go, you're going to count my vote.
I'm worried about so Lori Edwards is our current.
And she is up for, yeah.
And she is up for election and she is super knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I have seen her talk at so many events and she knows everything about elections. But one of the things that I'm actually worried about, I'm not worried about her closing polling places in a manner that's going to be unfair in any way or give advantage to any place. But our poll workers, especially in Polk County, are mostly over the age of 55 or 60. And I am very worried that she will have to close some polling places, not because she is trying to move things in one direction or another, but because she physically won't have enough people to run the polling spaces. And so that is my big concern. Even if people can early vote, because there's only 8 early voting locations. So if you are diehard, I need to go vote in a space. Okay, I just want you to vote. Like if that's the hill you're dying on, okie dokie. But go vote. But try to go vote early because we don't know that the 100-something regular polling places will actually all be open. So if you always say, I go down to this place that's around the corner from my house, and you show up there voting day and it's closed because we don't have enough polling people, what's your plan B?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so making that voting plan and then having a plan B is going to be a really important piece.
We typically vote early in person.
I was about to say that. Get out of my head.
Go ahead. Tell the story then.
Well, our assigned
Precinct
is church. So we go early because the Haines City Library, 2 minutes up the road, is our early voting location.
is a secular polling place. I've actually done a lot of research into like why that is the way it is and how you can change it, and it's not easy, and what the rules are that they have to follow while being a polling place. And so any of you who are voting in person, or who knows, we don't know what the hell November is going to look like, or August or anything.
Any of it.
If you think you're going to vote in person and you vote in your polling place in your precinct is a church, get in touch, because there's a bunch of stuff they cannot do while you are there to vote.
And guess what? They're probably doing it.
Yeah. And the Freedom from Religion Foundation would love to hear about it. Let's leave it at that. Let's get some info out there, some dates. There's a candidate forum coming up on July 27th at 7 p.m. that you're taking part in. Tell us about that a little bit.
So that is being hosted by Lake Wales Rotary, and then I think there's like 2 local Lake Wales journalism news places, but I don't remember their names right now, which might get me in trouble. But 7
nobody watches the show. Don't worry, you're fine.
7 o'clock on the 27th. Some of us are doing it live at the Lake Wales Rotary place. Some are doing it virtually. I'm still sort of in between because there's another forum that might be happening at 5 o'clock that same night. And if that's true, then I'm doing it virtually both from my desk, because going from one to the other, one's in Lakeland and the other's in Lake Wales, that's just no. But either way, it will be all 4 candidates, which will be, I think, the first time that that's happened. I know Billy and William Allen had a thing back and forth that was run by Kiwanis.
I watched that. And
so they had a private Kiwanis meeting, but then they released the video. This forum will be live on Facebook and in person, but it's a very limited audience, and they're doing spacing and distancing and mask wearing, and otherwise I would not be there live at all. But they're a very, very limited audience. Right. That's the fun thing about campaigning and COVID. Like, I know all of the science about staying home and why I need to, and also I'm campaigning.
And
so I have to sort of balance that risk reduction with what's safe to do. And there are some things I've been invited to, like, we're having a barbecue, and I'm like, nope. Good. Enjoy. I hope.
See, that's when
I would love to come and talk to your people, but I'm not going to risk my health or the health of others to do that. But if you're distancing, if you're wearing masks, if you're limiting the capacity, if you're like, at some point, that risk mitigation with a one-time event becomes worthwhile for me. And it's a case-by-case thing. And there are definitely things that I've been like, nope, not going to that.
Just send a case of beer to the barbecue. Compliments of Anita Carson for School Board District 2.
Little stickers, Anita Carson for School Board stickers. Like, enjoy. I love you guys. Enjoy it. Have fun. I can't join you.
And then you do your Friday Night Lives at 6 p.m. And that streams on the Anita Carson for School Board District 2 Facebook page. So people should go there and follow you. What is the website for your campaign? If because there's a lot of stuff we didn't talk about tonight, issue wise. We picked the stuff that I'm interested in, and and this pandemic has just gotten everything all screwed up. Like you have to talk about. Anyway, if people want to learn more about what you're for and all of that, where can they go look?
So I do have a website. It's carsonforpolk.com. However, I will say, if you're on Facebook, that's actually a better way to get to know me, because all of those Facebook Lives are recorded and then loaded there. So I literally have weeks and weeks and weeks. If you want to listen to me talk for 20 hours, I think at this point you might be able to. So like, that's going to be the best place. But I also have had several people that they want to know more just written because they're not video people. And so I'm going to start working on that a little bit more. But especially if you are a video or it's my face talking to a camera. You don't even have to watch it. If you are an audio podcast person, which you might be if you're watching this, then you just turn it on in the background and listen. And I answer questions from people. Like I told Sarah earlier, I fill an hour answering questions. That's pretty much all I do.
Yep.
It's not me giving a stump speech. It's new every time, and I take every question because I feel like that's important. And if I am not knowledgeable on all the questions people have, I shouldn't be running.
Yeah. And again, if you this is another keystone of science. I don't know, but I'll find out for you. And get, like again, like this is one of those things that really drew me to you. It is the way that you are available and interact with people, and you know, like ask me questions. We should be able to connect with people who are making decisions that affect our lives, and so I know that is a winning strategy and a key going forward. And I'm glad that we have the evidence science-based candidate paired with the ease of accessibility to the public. And I think that's gonna, I don't know, for me there's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. That makes me happy.
Well, let's leave it at that. The primary is August 18th, so it's like a month away. Let's make a plan to get back together, whether it's on the air or not. But we'll touch base and see how things are going, and God knows what could happen in the next month. We may have more stuff to talk about.
Right.
But really appreciate you spending a couple hours with us to chat about things.
You guys having me on. Oh, I can tell you because you guys live near me. They're sign waving tomorrow in Davenport if you want to go sign wave. It's distanced and you bring your own sign. And you guys have a magnet, I know.
We
have a sign and a magnet.
And a shirt. We've got it all.
And shirt.
She came to
they're
drop
sign waving tomorrow at the Posner Starbucks, 10 to 11. So if you guys want to go, I will not be there, but other people will. There's 5 different sign wavings happening at one time.
Oh, that's
around
nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Gonna have to find those event information.
Yeah.
I'll send you guys a link.
I do have to go to PetSmart to get some cat food.
There you go. Go to Posner, hang out for a little bit, then go to PetSmart. Perfect.
Love it.
Planned your morning.
Oh gosh. Well, again, Anita, thank you so much. We'll be in touch and chat with you again soon. And best wishes. I know you'd be a great addition to the new, what did I call them? The new generation.
Yeah.
New generation school board.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night. Tell everyone thank you for letting us steal you for another 2 hours after you did your live.
I will tell them. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right. Super cool. I love her.
Yeah. She's cool.
Yeah. She's good people. Oh, let me switch that back to us. Oh, hey, it's us. Without somebody. And there's no box in the middle now. I can.
Hi.
Hi. Well, before we go, is there anything else? What else is there anything going on we want to touch on? You got 2 minutes and go.
You were gonna you failed. You said, "Hey, guess what district we're in?" And then you never told her that.
Oh, well, she knows we're in her district.
Okay. Does she?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, not necessarily because we live here, but our kid might not go to school.
But the point is that you can vote for anyone.
Yeah. No, I know.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted the whole point of that was really just to highlight that this is a weird thing because it's not like you vote for your district person. Like that's not
I remember that from the last election because I thought it was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is weird.
I don't know. God,
you know who we need to get on the show? Billy Townsend.
Billy Townsend.
Come on, Billy. We'll get you on the show. We'll chat.
What you need to do is, do you have the clip of Bob Doyle telling you that you'd like Billy Townsend?
You know what? I don't know. I bet
I
I
go back
and listen
to that episode. And if you do,
just clip
cut
it out
the
and send
clip
it to
and
him?
send it to Billy. And, hey, you want to come on my show?
Anita did it. What are you waiting for?
Oh, that's
Oh
great.
man.
I should also point out that we are. This is not like a radio station where you have to FCC and you have to give equal time to whatever and everybody.
No.
I'm gonna pick the people I want to talk to.
Yeah.
And
Everybody else can suck it.
everybody else can suck
What's
it.
that guy's name that we don't like? The guy running against Billy Townsend.
We're
that
not
we
gonna
don't like.
we're not
We
gonna
don't
say
even-
his name
yeah, okay.
because it would give him the recognition.
Yeah.
No, I'm not even gonna do that.
No.
Didn't
okay.
mention Anita's
Yeah.
competition by name either.
No. She needs to go though. She needs to go.
But see, that's the thing. Like, we have our child is 10. We've had a student in the public school system for 5 years. I've never seen any like there's no communication. There's no hey, come find me on Facebook and
No,
chat with me or
absolutely
send me
not.
messages or no.
No.
There's none of that.
No.
No.
Like, and like we are fortunate. This is where it goes back to the conversation of privilege. We are fortunate. Our kids are in a premier school.
Yeah.
Like where the administration on campus is amazing. I know that I can text anyone in that administration building and get an answer within an hour.
Yeah.
So
right.
I've never had the need.
Yep.
To have a school board member like have my back for anything.
Yep.
But that's not always the case.
Right.
There are so many schools that it's just you need your school board member to be present so that they know what issues you're fighting with every day,
Right.
so that they know what they have to look for to fix.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like if she's missing 32 meetings in her whatever, that doesn't give me much hope that she's helping out the schools that do need help. Like I don't think our school needs that help.
Right.
But there's a school a mile away that really, really needs help.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. I here's the other piece of this that I mentioned evidence-based reason science background. When we had on that 2016, I guess it was, we were at 16. I can't remember
Where
now.
were we?
We were at Polk Pride, and
Yes.
we interviewed God and everybody.
Everybody.
And that was where we met Sarah Fortney,
Yes, we had- yeah.
who won in that
Mhm.
race against Kayla.
Yeah.
Who we interviewed here at the studio.
Yeah. We did give equal time to that.
I
one.
was okay either way. Like I didn't
Yeah.
really have a
Right.
like. I really liked Kayla because I like that idea
Mhm.
of being close to the educational experience
Right.
as a student perspective, and like she's just whip fucking smart
Yes.
and like that. But can I tell you what we've seen since that election? Sarah Fortney is a science teacher.
Yeah.
And she's part of what I call the new generation of the board. And so
yeah.
she's also, I can send her a Facebook message and connect with her and ask her questions
Right.
and whatever. I know that she's making decisions from a science-based evidence.
She's super accessible.
That was you, not the dog.
She's like rubbing her foot on my leg, and I'm like, "Whoa!" And she
Hello.
thought I was the dog. Do I need to shave that badly?
Yes.
Gosh, it's no shave COVID.
Oh my
I'm
God.
not shaving.
So-
but oh God, now I lost my train of thought. Choo choo.
Sarah Fortney, science evidence based. She's making decisions. She's a science teacher.
Oh, but she's accessible.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
super active on the social media. Like,
And it's like there's a big part of me that's like, guys, it's 2020 for fuck's sake. If you don't know how to get on the social media and interact with your constituents, you're too boomer to be in that
Yeah.
position.
mhm.
Hello, Polk County Commission, calling you, which is
Right.
nutso, and don't call me ageist because Bob Doyle's an old dude,
Yeah,
but he's
he's
on
on it.
Facebook. I talk to him all the time too. Talk to him about some legal stuff this week, as a
Uh-huh.
matter of fact.
But like that's the thing. Like you have in this day and age, we live on our phones.
Yep.
We live on Facebook.
Yep.
I would be confident to say that 90% of people born after 1975 get their news on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's just where we are at.
Right.
And so if you are there and we know that you're there and we can see what you're doing there.
I wonder if a lot of this is like nobody has just really like pointed the light at and questioned, why do we still have this mentality of, well, if the public wants to interact with us, they can come to our meeting. Why is that an okay threshold? Because it's that bar is too low.
It's lazy is what it is. It's a system that was built so that the people that were in charge could keep control, because they know that not everybody can just drop what they're doing to go to your meeting. And so, well, if you can't come to the meeting, then we can't. It's the same thing with the HOA. You can't get an answer from your HOA unless you go to the board meeting, because you can send letters all day long to the management company and they're not going to reply to you. It's just the way that these systems are built. It's built to benefit the people in charge, not the people that have to deal with the shit decisions that the people in charge make.
And it may have worked once upon a time, but now that it's not working anymore, I think you're partially right. I think now that it doesn't work for a large group of people, those in power are seizing that as an opportunity to stay. And I don't think it was designed that way. I think it was designed at a time when you could go to a school board meeting; it was no big deal.
Yeah.
But now that that's not as accessible, now we have people taking advantage of that situation.
And like not we're all, but like in general, society is open 24/7. So if you're working a job, you're like, if you work at Walmart and you're on, the evening shift, you can't go to your school board meeting. You can't go to the, and that's just it. Stupid.
Hey, everybody vote. Vote for Anita Carson. We love her. Absolutely. She's great. And I've had a really great private 2-hour conversation like this. I mean, this was literally just like it was talking to her on the phone a month or so ago or whenever that was. So she's, what you saw tonight is what you get in person. And I think she's going to be fantastic on the school board. So let's call it for a night. I'm ready to go to bed, and we'll see you next time. You've been listening to SarahTalk.
SarahTalk is made possible by listener support. Visit patreon.com/SarahTalk to become a patron and help keep this program going. Contact Sarah and Company by email at producer@sarahtalk.com or call 224-40-SARAH. That's 224-407-2724. And follow us on social media, facebook.com/SarahTalkRadio and on Twitter @SarahTalkRadio. The opinions and information provided on this show are intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions are solely that of the hosts and their guests. We make no representations as to accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or validity of any information and will not be liable for any errors or damages. SarahTalk is a production of Sarah Austin Media.